Well, thanks to the Civil War trailer, Spidey's back on everybody's mind, so let's all talk about that. So welcome to Council of Geeks. My name is Nathaniel Wayne, and I'm joined today by Ryan Daly. Thanks for coming in, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
So, we were going to talk about this anyway, but the timing had suddenly become more appropriate because in the wake of the Civil War trailer, there is, of course, the capper on the end of that, and we get to see Spider-Man. We're not going to dwell on that because that is not the main thing we were coming, but just quick thoughts. What'd you think? The look?
In general, I was very happy with it. And it happened so quickly that all I got was the sense of it, the impression of the Spider-Man. And it looks very, very good. I was taken back by the brightness of the costume. I don't recall seeing a brighter red on a superhero costume, maybe since the Christopher Reeve Superman. Like, on a second viewing, I was like, does it look washed out? Does it look overly rendered or overly CG? And then a third viewing, I was like, no, it's fine. I liked the motion of the eyes. They're doing the Deadpool thing where the eyes are a little bit more expressive. And at first they're bigger, and then they get kind of narrow. It reminds me of the classic comics. And the costume might go through some changes. I mean, Captain America's costume has changed every movie.
I know.
What'd you think?
I liked it. And I liked it despite having told you before the trailer came out, wishing that they wouldn't do it. I kind of had my secret hope that they were going to leave him out of the marketing altogether. Mm-hmm. And having now seen him, I'm okay. Because it is just this little moment now. I am now hoping that we're not going to see any more of him. Because, I mean, this was valid because anyone who is not like us and keeping tabs on the thing may not have been aware that he was in this. So, okay, so fine, he's in there. Now everybody knows. Can we leave it at that, please? We'll move on from the trailer because I have a video up on YouTube with my own thoughts on it. You want to get more complete thoughts, you can go to that. What we were always going to talk about is sort of Spidey's villains, sort of starting with the fact that apparently the Venom solo movie is not as dead as we may have been led to believe or maybe had hoped that it was.
Yeah, there's still some rumors going around. I don't think it's official. I don't think it's been announced, but that rumor just kind of popped up recently that Sony is still actively developing this as a movie project. Completely separate, maybe separate from their Spider-Man movies that they're doing with Marvel.
Venom, his entire core concept is evil Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that without the origination?
It strikes me as a very smart thing for two reasons. First and foremost, I think the success of Deadpool.
Yeah.
They can market Venom as their dark, violent, rated R version of their superhero movie.
He is sometimes known as the Lethal Protector, let us not forget.
So they will, and I have every confidence that is the direction that they will go with it.
Okay.
The other is, I think when the Sony email hacks came out a little bit more than a year ago, I think they got gun shy and they felt like they were pressured to make this deal with Marvel and it was the best thing for everybody. But now they're sitting on one superhero franchise that they kind of have to share with another one. Meanwhile, DC or Warner Brothers is going to be doing 2 or 3 movies a year. Disney's doing 2 or 3 movies a year. Fox is doing 2 or 3 movies a year. Sony's like, why are we only doing 1 or half of 1 movie a year? We still had all these plans. We're still losing this cash or not doing anything with it. So I think they still think they can make money off of a Venom movie, and I think they will if they do it.
I guess you've sort of hit some notions as to the why. Why would they do this? And there are reasons. They're not creative reasons, but there are reasons to do it. So I guess the question then becomes, how? And I think the only way that you can do it is to go with one of the more recent versions of Venom. You can't do Eddie Brock. Because absolutely, even though he is the most iconic Venom, absolutely everything about that Venom, it ties back to Spider-Man. Eddie's entire origin and his motivation ties to Spider-Man. The suit and its entire origin and its hatred ties back to Spider-Man. Then they merge together through a joint hatred of Spider-Man. Now, and I don't know if this is the current version of Venom, but I know certainly recently, Venom was basically an agent of the government, and he was Flash Thompson.
Flash Thompson, former high school
student turned now veteran, missing limbs, I believe.
I think he lost both of his legs in the war.
So,
and the Venom symbiote is able to regenerate those for these purposes.
And they've got this whole thing going where they send him out on missions, but he gets very limited time with the suit because they don't want it corrupting him. And I feel like that version or something along those lines, one of the more recent interpretations, logistically, that's kind of what they're going to have to do.
And I wouldn't have a problem with that if they went for it. I also think I would not be surprised at all if they call the protagonist Eddie Brock because of what little name recognition that carries. Now, will it be any Eddie Brock that we recognize from the comics or the cartoons? Probably not so much for the reasons you outlined. But on the basis of, do people know that Venom is Eddie Brock? They might, so let's call the character Eddie Brock.
So you think we're going to run into sort of the modern Flash thing where we're going to call him Barry Allen, but everything about his personality is Wally West?
I think something like that, yeah. I didn't care about Venom that much when he was more popular because I liked Carnage better. So...
Oh, you poor misguided fool.
Yeah, well, Carnage was red, and I like the color red, but that's...
You know what? That's as coherent a reason for liking Carnage as anything else.
That's about it.
Why not? So Venom, it's an odd idea, but of course that sort of brings to mind the other supposedly scrapped, maybe they're not, ideas like the Sinister Six movie. And that kind of just brought me to the idea of talking about Spidey's Rogues Gallery in general. Because you had a conversation on, I believe it was Secret Origins podcast. You were talking about Flash's Rogues Gallery. And Spider-Man kind of has the same thing going, which is that his rogues are really very much geared towards the comic book format. They're good for 1 or 2 issues. Yep. They've all got very personal motivations, but with only a couple of exceptions, he's basically stopping elaborate bank robbers.
Right, bank robbers or stalkers or people with a very simple revenge motive.
Yeah.
But they're not complex characters. They're science-y, gimmicky villains.
Yeah. So the question becomes, who's left?
But we've seen Goblin in 3 of the last 5 Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
You've got Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, one of my personal favorites. He was done so well, and I think he will be a heavy hitter, but maybe not in the next Spider-Man movie that we get. 2 other villains who I think can carry their own movie. One would be Venom, actually.
Yes.
But if they're doing a solo Venom movie that's I think will probably be rated R or a hard PG-13. I don't think it will be in the same universe.
Especially if it's being developed. If they go R or not, if they're developing it right now, that means it's going to come out soonish to when the Spider-Man movie comes out. So we can assume he's not going to be in Spider-Man first. He's just going to appear.
Right. And the 4th one would be Kraven the Hunter. I think you can get a good full movie story out of Kraven the Hunter. And you can do something like an adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt, the most famous story. I don't think they should try to do a straight adaptation of it. I think they can tame it a little bit. I mean, that's an intense story.
That's a very intense story.
Especially if we're looking at a potential first movie for this new Spider-Man.
See, that's the thing with Kraven. I don't think he works as a first movie villain.
I don't think
because he's the kind of villain you bring in for the second movie to lay your hero low.
Right. The first Spider-Man movie is not going to be an origin movie. They've said that. They have this character established already. But I agree. 2 other villains that could potentially carry a full movie on their own with a generous amount of padding. Mm-hmm. One is the Lizard, who we already saw in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, so I don't think we're going to see him again.
Yeah.
And another one, again, with a generous amount of padding, I think Mysterio could be used as a full villain, but again, I don't see that as a first-round Spider-Man villain.
Mysterio's a really tough one, because the thing is, the thing about Mysterio is that at this point, he really kind of only works as a surprise villain. That you find out it's him at the end, because the instant you know it's him, you know what the gimmick is, which is that you can't trust anything you see. It's all illusion. Yeah. So if you know it's him up front, then nothing has any stakes, because it's all fake.
Right.
Here's the one that I think would be perfect, but I know they can't use, which is Kingpin. Kingpin would actually be perfect, because he'd be perfect ground level, good for early career Spider-Man, and he could hire any elaborate hitman that you would care to think of.
And there are other gangsters they could use. They could do somebody like Tombstone or Hammerhead, just kind of generic gangsters. They're not going to have the gravitas of Wilson Fisk, which is a miss, but you can do that.
The other one that I think might work would be Alistair Smythe and the Spider Slayers.
I was thinking about that one too, and actually just came to me today. And I would actually blend that with the Scorpion. Now, the Scorpion's original origin in the comics, it was like Spider-Man 12, I think, was that he was created in part and funded by J. Jonah Jameson. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a story that if you do that, you can't use J. Jonah Jameson anymore, because I think we know enough about, okay, if this guy hires a murderer to try and kill this kid, he's not going to be allowed to run a newspaper anymore.
Nah.
But you could change that. You could blend both of those ideas. You could have Smythe make Scorpion as the ultimate Spider Slayer or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think he would have a slightly bulkier look. You can do a lot of fun things with the tail for like visual gags and for combat. So maybe something like that, a combination of Scorpion and or the Spider Slayers. So I think the one villain thing that we haven't talked about, and again, this is something you build towards, Sony. You build towards this, which is the Sinister Six.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the best supervillain concepts ever, and it's something that you can do with Spider-Man and not many other people. It shows you how great Spider-Man is as a hero, that he has to tackle all of these guys at the same time. But again, you don't make a Sinister Six solo movie as your knockoff Suicide Squad or your villain team-up movie. It has to be about Spider-Man overcoming all of these obstacles thrown on top of each other and what he can do. It's something you do for your fourth and final Spider-Man solo movie in this franchise. I'm assuming we're not going to see a villain team-up in the first Spider-Man movie unless it's a sort of tech mastermind and his goon, or a gangster mastermind and his goon.
Here's a thought. If we just conceptually take the Sinister Six, and we even think about what it looked like Amazing Spider-Man 2 setup, which was because we saw basically the tech for a whole lot of these guys sort of in one person's possession.
Sure.
So what if we got a Sinister Six movie where, and as much as it kind of on some level hurts me to say this, but I have to at the same time admit I think it would work. What if the Sinister Six were effectively the high-tech hit squad, the jacked up minions of somebody who provided them with their tech?
I think I could stomach that if it was presented well, because again, because most of those guys, their origins are so simplistic and their motives are so generic. Yeah, if they're just ex-cons or mercenaries that are hired and say, here's a wingsuit, you can fly now like a vulture. Here's a weird tail, you can be the Scorpion. If they did
here's 4 more limbs.
Here's 4 more limbs. If they did something like that, I could probably stomach that and work with it.
Now, I'm of two minds of that, because I'm like, that would work I think in a vacuum, self-contained within the movie, but that does basically mean you are downgrading 6 villains to nothing but henchmen, and on a creative level that seems like a bit of a waste, especially if you're franchise building.
The movie still needs to be about Spider-Man. It needs to be about him at the core. And
yes, that's true.
And that's still, even if you're streamlining the motivations and the setup of how they get their powers, that's still putting a lot of time and a lot of weight on the villains, and mostly putting the spectacle on the villains. And that is something that Marvel has really gone aggressively against. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people complain that their villains aren't that memorable and they don't get brought back, is because Marvel's like, no, we're spending more of these money to keep Chris Evans around. Let's make the movie about Chris Evans. If Sony was behind it, I can see them going with your track. I think with Marvel exerting more creative control, that's not the way they would approach, certainly not the first Spider-Man movie. I think we're going to get one main antagonist, possibly a henchman working for a gangster mastermind like a Hammerhead or a Norman Osborn that we just don't see as the Goblin, but just sort of as a suit. Or maybe
I would be okay with that, because
or Octavius sort of building this tech. If I could pick anybody, I wouldn't mind seeing Doc Ock come back as the main villain. I don't think he will be. I think they'll hold him back for a little bit longer. I would not object to him because he's such a great villain.
By the time this movie comes out, it'll have been at least 12 years since we had a Doc Ock. I think it might have been enough time that that they could get away with doing him again. Now that I'm thinking of it, I think that would be my preference, because he is one of the few, because he is an evil genius and not just a bruiser,
Right.
Which is what a lot of these guys are. But you can actually build something bigger around Doc Ock, and I think he'd probably be the best call now that I'm sort of talking it out.
I think that would be my 1-2 punch for the first 2 Spider-Man movies: Doc Ock and Kraven, and or the Spidey Slayers.
Yep. So Sony, Marvel, we have a plan. Give us a call.
Yep.
So speaking of giving people calls, keeping track of what you're up to, Ryan, pluggo.
3 podcasts on the Fire and Water Podcast Network: the Secret Origins podcast, Power of Fishnets, a Black Canary and Zatanna podcast, and Give Me Those Star Wars, which is about, interestingly enough, Star Wars.
Wow, really?
Right?
Huh.
You can also find my work at risingsuncomics.com. I am the author of the webcomic Red and Green, co-author, I should say, co-creator, and the creator and sole writer of the webcomic My Pet Ninja. Both available at risingsuncomics.com.
Awesome. If you're watching this video, why not check out the Council of Geeks podcast, where you can hear a longer, uncut version of this thing you just saw. So thanks for coming in, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us on this. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I'm on Twitter at Council of Geeks. You can email councilofgeeks@gmail.com. And until next time, this council is adjourned.
You want to say it?